Welcome to the Center for Medical Simulation Grand Rounds. This is an occasional podcast in which we present recent work by colleagues here at the Center for Medical Simulation that we have published. And this week, Clément Buléon and I, Jenny Rudolph, will be talking about our paper, The Advocacy Inquiry Rubric, known as the AIR, a standard to build debriefing and feedback skills. And I'm really pleased to be here with the first author, Clément Buléon, who's been working on this project for several years. And our goal is to share with you what we've done with the AIR, how we developed the AIR, and how you might use the AIR. But have you ever noticed that some people seem to do feedback conversations or conduct debriefing conversations so smoothly and easily, it almost looks like magic, and you have no idea how they are doing what they're doing? Well, Clément and I and the other authors thought, wow, could we try to unpack what is going on behind that and help people master being able to use this conversational technique called advocacy inquiry skillfully and easily? As Tim Draycott used to say, can we make the right way the easy way? And we think by having a way to provide feedback consistently using a rubric, we may be able to make a really powerful conversational technique much easier, if not easy, to do. So let me start by introducing my colleague Clément Buléon. Clément is an anesthesiologist, PhD, working in Caen, France. And Clément, could you just tell us a little bit more about all the cool things that you do?
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity. So I'm anesthesiologist half time. The other half time, I'm a simulationist. I'm having my clinical practice in Caen, but my simulation practice is in many places in France, Europe, and all over the world. In Liège Simulation Center, working with all the resident program in anesthesia in French, which I'm lucky to lead. Collaboration with WHO Academy in Lyon, and very interesting program that with Rebecca Meinert and other colleagues we developed in Vietnam for the last 3 years.
So also with us today is James Lipshaw, the Center for Medical Simulation Assistant Director for Media and Instructional Design. And James really helped us a lot on this project with usability testing, graphical display, et cetera. And James, could you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, and folks may recognize my voice from other CMS podcasts, but nice to be here as a co-author, not just a facilitator, and very honored to be. And I was very interested when this project started, way back when, in thinking about the ways that the tool could be the most useful and immediately useful to folks who are attempting to use it. Like, how do we display the information? How do we say what is the most important, like in the hierarchy of information, so that when folks go to try to use this to rate advocacy inquiry, it's the easiest possible version of that to do.
Great. And James, if I may add one thing, not only rate advocacy inquiry, but use the rubric to provide feedback to each other or self-assessment.
Yeah, absolutely.
As this interesting abilities to help both learner and teacher and even master at different level. So we can learn and we can teach, and we can even when we are master, standardize what we're doing, because someday we're very good and someday we're just so. And having a rubric help us to give a reliable experience of teaching and learning. So I think that was one of the things that we thought when we developed.
So I want to just connect to a couple of things Clément said. Clément was with us some number of years ago, which I'm not now going to mention. as a simulation fellow. And he and I and another colleague who was at CMS at the time, Damien Shield, who's a co-author on this paper, started thinking about how could we help people be even more skillful in feedback conversations and debriefing conversations. And we decided we were going to focus on an algorithm that we've used a lot to help debriefers, which is preview, I saw, I think, I wonder, listen, which we will be labeling today advocacy inquiry, even though there's more than just an advocacy and just an inquiry in it. And Clément, I remember when you landed with your wife and your twin boys and your young girl in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it was such a joy to have you and the whole family with us for the year. So happy to kind of talk about how that journey then continued with this work.
The one thing that I'm thinking about is that the tool is called the Advocacy Inquiry Rubric, and we call that the AIR for short.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's possibly going to sound a little confusing when we talk about being an AIR rater. But in a way, it is a tool that is making the spout of water from your faucet a little more manageable for the learner to deal with.
All right, I'll take the metaphor. This week, what we're going to be talking about is a paper called the Advocacy Inquiry Rubric, AIR, which is a standard to build debriefing and feedback skills. The authors are first author Clément Buléon, who's with me now, Damien Shield, Robert Simon, Lon Setnick, Walter Epic, Mary Fay, James Lipshaw, who's also with us today, Janice Palaganis, and me, Jenny Rudolph. We also have a banner author group called the Advocacy Inquiry Interest Group, 40 people who provided us guidance in how to develop this instrument in a process Clément will describe in a moment. Also part of that group were 3 testers of the rubric who generously gave us their time to try to use it to rate advocacy inquiry recordings. So let me move ahead here and just talk about why did we even create the AIR and what gap were we trying to bridge and what gap were we trying to fill? So part of the issue that we found at the Center for Medical Simulation is any conversational expertise is much easier to master if we have a shared standard that we are driving people up the learning curve to achieve. And that's because people can give consistent feedback when they hear an observation statement, they hear a point of view statement, they hear an inquiry statement. There are certain qualities to those statements that make them better or worse. And if we can all agree on what makes them better or worse, then we can all coach our learners in the same way. So Clément and I and the other authors set out to try to figure out how could we develop that. And one of our big goals was to demystify what many people perceive as the black box of advocacy inquiry. You kind of know a good advocacy inquiry when you hear it. Let's talk about the importance of managing parent presence is a preview statement. I saw you turn your back on mom in the middle of that procedure, an observation, part of an advocacy. I was concerned that turning your back on the mom might have escalated her anxiety a little bit. My point of view, something Hayden Richards calls a good judgment statement, and I like that. And then an inquiry, hey, can you tell me what was going on for you at the time? Sounds super simple. It is pretty straightforward once you've mastered it, but how do you help people get to being able to do this quite hard thing, because it's socially abnormal, of sharing their point of view, sharing what they see, and inquiring into the other person's point of view without getting all harsh and judgy or without kind of hiding what they really think. So that's what we were after, is to help people get there. So Clément, I want to turn to you now and just talk a bit about how did we build the rubric, and I'm interested in hearing about the Delphi study for starters.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Hearing you, I was thinking that we all want to have your feedback, expert feedback. And at the moment we're training by yourself, or if we're an intermediate, we wish that we can have a bit of feedback from the most expert in the field on giving feedback. And that's kind of what we tried to build, and I hope that we achieve a little bit with the development of the year, gathering 40 experts all around the world with different culture, multiple language. We get their perception of what is an efficient feedback using the strategy of the advocacy inquiry. Everyone was able to give all their description and ideas on what is a good preview or a poor preview and theme for each element you mentioned. We finally get 6 descriptors for each of the elements, and with level from beginner, intermediate, and advanced, that can help to start, improve, or master the advocacy inquiry technique and strategy.
So next, we want to talk a little bit about how we shaped the instrument once we had the behavioral markers to make it usable for people. And what we did is we had 3 cohorts of instructors who were in our instructor training course at the Center for Medical Simulation. We invited volunteers to try out the rubric, listening to different advocacy inquiries and practice rating or giving feedback using the rubric. And so, James, I want to toss the ball to you to talk to us a little bit about what we learned and how we changed the instrument based on that.
The key with the original tests of this, as with a lot of instruments where you're trying to cover a huge number of behavioral markers, is that the amount of things that you can be looking for can be pretty overwhelming when they're just presented as a list. Having seen that, we were trying to figure out essentially how can we make the tool more streamlined and easier for someone who is attempting to rate an advocacy inquiry live in the moment to find the information they need and use it to give feedback or to assess what they're trying to give feedback on or assess. And one of the things that we noticed is that within the markers that the Delphi group put forward, there are a number of what I would call natural pairings between positive and negative behaviors. And so, as an example of that, within a preview, the most commonly occurring behavioral marker for a good preview would be orients the listener to the topic, describes the topic, signals a change of topic. There is a poor pair that goes along with this that was the second most signaled indicator of a poor advocacy inquiry, which is no preview or no signal of topic change. Now, for the user, it's not necessary to have both of those things in a list. You essentially have a menu at a restaurant where the same thing is in 2 different sections of the menu. It's here in the good section and it's here in the poor section. And that's just adding clutter to a tool that we're trying to streamline as much as possible. And so what we realized was that there was a way to present this where those naturally paired components for each element, preview, I saw, I think, and I wonder, were placed in a single line where someone could easily see that these 2 things are linked. So whether it's a thing that occurred or a thing that was omitted, we can see that that is elements or markers of the same thing that we were looking for there. And so being able to pair those things basically reduced the number of pieces of information that a rater needed to have in their head as they were observing by half.
And then, James, the other thing I wanted to talk with people about is a numeric rating scale versus an emoji rating scale versus a qualitative feedback scale.
We tested a few different ways for users to give qualitative scores for the elements. And the question is, do we want to use some sort of, 3, 5, or 7-point Likert scale, which would say, rate this between a 1 and a 7, least effective to most effective. The DASH, as an example, the Debriefing Assessment for Simulation in Healthcare, uses a 7-point Likert scale. Or would it be more effective to used something that was essentially a 3-point scale, which is not good, okay, or good. And it turns out that with the challenges of inter-rater reliability, when you expand the scale or the quantitative number of numbers that you have inside of your scale, getting into the psychometrics of it, it's actually just as useful to break it down to 3 numbers. And at the point where you're breaking it down to it's a 1, a 2, or a 3, not good, okay, or good, those numbers can basically be replaced by emojis, which is to say a frowny face, a neutral face, or a smiling face. And what we found when we experimented with and replaced the numerical scale with an emoji-based scale is that raters were able to much more quickly and much more efficiently label things, make their assessments, and also a surprising result is that peer raters were often much more willing to acknowledge that the performance for a specific element was not to the standard if the way that they were indicating that was through an emoji. Say this was a frowny face version of this, it wasn't up to the standard, versus giving someone a poor numerical score. Peers especially did not wish to give other peers poor numerical scores when it came to any type of performance, which is a very interesting observable outcome.
Yeah, and James, I'm snickering there because when I was conducting those usability tests, I remember people literally hated giving each other numbers, and you and I, were sitting there and heard these reactions, and we're like, okay, yeah, we got to really do something different here. So this is all well and good, and I'm thinking that some of you will be interested in the development of a rating instrument, and others of you will be like, Rudolph, can we please move on? So we're about to move on. And what we'd like to do is show you how this works in practice. So Clément and team developed a numeric rating scale, which has 7 points. And you can use, if you're a program director and you want to benchmark where are people up to in terms of their advocacy inquiry skills, and you want to be able to track how they're doing over time. Are they getting better? Perhaps you have some sort of a summative rating process where people have to get a certain score in order to be able to move on to the next thing. We also have the emoji rating version, which is 3 emojis that allow peers primarily to give each other feedback, though you certainly could use it in a education program for feedback or a simulation program for debriefing. But I think the version that we're all the most excited about is the one we call the teaching and learning version, which is one that allows us to give qualitative feedback using the behavioral markers to someone else who's trying to become a better feedback conversation leader, better debriefing conversation leader. Advocacy inquiry, for what it's worth, is incredibly valuable in negotiation conversations, speaking up conversations. So anybody who wants to master preview, I saw, I think, I wonder as part of a conversation, this teaching and learning version helps them see what to do, but also helps their instructors or their coaches or their facilitators give them feedback. All right, so James, I'm going to hand over to you to facilitate our next couple moments here, actually using the air to provide some feedback to people who are trying to conduct a feedback or debriefing conversation.
Yeah, so let me set up what we're going to do here as an activity. I am going to present a series of advocacy inquiries. Preview, I saw, I think, I wonder, listen, potentially. Some may be missing some parts. And what Jenny and Clément are going to do is they are going to use the air, they're going to look through the eyes of the air, identify the concrete data of what they saw, and they're going to use the tool to determine what is meeting the standard, what is not meeting the standard, and what feedback they could give the person based on the tool. So this is very, very similar to what we might do in our debriefing assessment for simulation in healthcare training workshop. And our hope is that this will show you how you could use the AIR advocacy inquiry rubric to give feedback on folks as they are asking questions in debriefing or feedback conversations. All right, so here is our first example of a preview advocacy inquiry. Listen for you guys to think about through the eyes of the rubric.
So let's talk about when you gave that morphine. That was really bad. I saw his systolic pressure was below 90 and you gave him 2 milligrams of morphine. I'm really worried it's going to make his systolic pressure worse. So what was on your mind?
Well, I mean, isn't pain supposed to be like the fifth vital sign?
I thought the preview was kind of mixed because I think I heard her say, hey, I want to talk about giving morphine to that hypotensive patient. I thought that was really bad. So I thought the preview did a decent job of, quote, orienting the listener to the topic,
Yes,
which is
that's a mixed
giving,
one.
morphine to the hypotensive patient. Downgraded it a little bit for me was that was really bad, which is including an evaluation in your preview, which is something that the AIR suggests we steer away from. So if we were giving feedback to this preceptor, I think I might say, hey, great job selecting an important topic. I think it was clear to the learner what you were talking about. And I would find a way to not skewer them in your very first opening statement by saying that was really bad. And so we might coach them on an alternative way to share their concern.
Agreed, Jenny. And the other version was factual and bring the learner to the point, describing clearly and concretely what happened, explaining her point of view and concern about the consequence of giving morphine and the blood pressure. I think that the inquiry can be more open tone given to the question, what was in your mind, is sound to me a little bit judgy.
Yeah. So I concur with everything you said there, Clément. And we didn't see her paraphrasing or reacting to what the learner said. I thought pain was the fifth vital sign. So we couldn't really rate the listen. But I think what you said, the observation was factual. The point of view was clear. I think here's the impact on hypotension if you give more morphine to a hypotensive patient. So I would say this person has some things to work on in terms of their tone. I agree with you, and some things to work on in terms of, at the very least, being a little more neutral. So I think we could give them some decent feedback with this. Clément, this one, I'm assuming he's going to give us a not good observation, so let's focus on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it may be an omission, so that may be
Okay.
slightly tricky, and that it may just not exist.
So let's talk about when you give that morphine. I saw his blood pressure was pretty low, and I'm afraid that was going to make it worse. So what was on your mind at the time?
I mean, I saw it was pretty low too.
I heard as a preview, let's talk about the morphine. But what I want to focus on here is the observation. So in the AIR, for the observation, we're looking for the speaker or the conversation leader to describe some concrete, visible, audible phenomena or actions of the other person. And there are some other criteria as well. But in this case, the observation focused on the vital signs of the patient, which, although correct, don't help the learner understand what he did in this context. So I would be coaching this preceptor to add something in like, hey, I want to talk about giving morphine in the context of hypotension. I noticed that you pushed morphine for this patient. So as simple and straightforward as that seems, that's the relevant piece of information, not that his blood pressure was low. Do you have any different thoughts on that, Clément?
No, I agree with you. And we can hear and see the confusion of the receiver of the question, because without the observation, it's not clear for him what was the point, where to go, what to answer. So that's when we can obviously see that we're unclear or inefficient in our observation when our participant seems confused.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, because this is a tricky one, the value of a detailed tool with behavioral markers for such a case, because it is, if you were at the very simple level of the observation should have concrete data. The observation did have concrete data, but the error goes into more detail to say exactly what Jenny said, which is that concrete data needs to be about an action that the learner or the feedback receiver took.
So let's talk about when you gave the morphine. I saw that his blood pressure was in the high 80s, low 90s, and you gave 2 milligrams of morphine IV. So what was on your mind at the time?
I'm not sure what you want me to say.
So here, what's missing is the point of view by itself. And it's really frequent because in the wish to protect or learner partners,
Wish to protect their feelings or?
Yes, definitely. In the wish to protect our partner's feeling and don't want to seems picky, we're preferring just to ask directly the question. And in fact, not rating why it's important for us, explaining why we're concerned about that, what are the consequences of doing something or not doing something. We're missing the important part to bring the or partners to understand that we are not criticizing him or her, but we're more interested in understanding why it's happening.
And Clément, I'm sure I don't know. I'm suspecting that you have found the same thing I have, which is this is the most common omission.
Yes.
In advocacy inquiry. People hate to share their point of view sometimes because they don't know how to do it skillfully.
So let's talk about when you gave that morphine. I saw that his systolic pressure was 89 or 90. You gave 2 milligrams of morphine. And, I think it's really important to give the right medication at the right time. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's really important to give the right medication too. I mean, we learned all the medication rights.
That's a good one. So here we're hearing a point of view, but not a clear point of view. So right medication at the right time. So following my medication and timing. So if I'm not clear about what is the right medication and time according to the guidelines or practice in the department, there is little chance that we're finding each other on the same level of understanding. And if we're not on the same page, there is little chance that we can merge on our discussion.
And if I could build on that, Clément, the AIR talks about the point of view being honest or transparent about the speaker's judgment and opinion. And I think this point of view hinted at the instructor's point of view. This point of view hinted at what the instructor believed, which is it's important to give the right medication at the right time. And you gave the wrong medication at the wrong time.
That's true.
Or the right medication at the wrong time. I'm not sure what she thinks. So that behavioral marker wasn't met. But the other thing that she didn't do that the AIR helps us see is she didn't reveal what was her perspective on the link between giving morphine to the care of this hypotensive patient. And since I'm somewhat aware of this scenario, her worry, I believe, is if you give morphine to a patient who already has low blood pressure, it's going to make the blood pressure even lower. And so that's dangerous. And so that link was not conveyed.
All right, let's pop over to the next one.
So let's talk about when you gave the morphine. I saw that Mr. Compton's blood pressure was like 88 systolic, and you gave 2 milligrams of morphine. And, I'm kind of worried that that's going to make that hypotension even worse. So what would you do differently next time?
Okay, so I'll take that one. The preview actually was quite good there. I want to talk about Mr. Compton's blood pressure. I noticed it was X, or I want to talk about Mr. Compton's blood pressure. Then I noticed it was X. I saw you gave Y amount of morphine. I think that it might drop his blood pressure further. So her point of view was helpful there. And then her inquiry was, what would you do differently next time? And the AIR suggests that inquiries should be directed at what is the learner thinking at the moment that they took the action, not what should they think in the future. So that question is a one that's leading the learner to start thinking about future actions, which all of us teachers want learners to do, and bravo for her for being concerned about that. But seeing through the eyes of the AIR, we're looking for an open-ended question that invites a broad range of explanations. As our colleague Laura Rock often says, it's an essay question, not a multiple choice question. Generally, it's free of judgment and again, that inquiry sort of failed on that particular criterion, because when you say, what would you do differently next time? You're implying that what was done now was not good. It's not that it wasn't good. It could indeed be improved, but it's better if you can share that openly and honestly with the observation and point of view, as she did. And so I would be coaching this colleague to ask an open-ended question that allows the learner to share his or her thinking at the moment they took the action, not correcting it for the future.
All right, last one.
So let's talk about when you gave the morphine. I saw that Mr. Compton's blood pressure was around 89/60, and you gave the 2 milligrams of morphine. And I'm really worried that giving that morphine is going to make his hypotension get even worse. So can you just walk me through what your thinking was there?
Yeah, so I had.
So, I think we should really review the contraindications and side effects of morphine. Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
So interestingly, that was almost a perfect one until the end. So I think teacher was so excited about the discussion that she missed the opportunity to listen our learners and to give him the opportunity to explain his perspective. And that's it.
Yes, and in the AIR, we the first behavioral marker we're looking for is allow the speaker to finish stating their thoughts. And so Clément could invoke the AIR criterion and share that with that instructor.
Even using some silence or encouraging more development of expression or thought, or paraphrasing, restating to be sure that we have well understand what is the explanations provided.
So our goal with developing the AIR in some ways was to build and strengthen the international community of practice who can develop their skills in feedback conversation or debriefing conversations. And a community of practice is this idea that we're all working on trying to get better at something together. And I think that having an agreed upon standard for a skill that we are trying to develop collectively is often really helpful. Let me be clear. I think there's often value in letting many flowers bloom and letting many people do things in different ways. It's not that I think everybody has to have feedback conversations done the exact same way or debriefing conversations done the exact same way. It's that if you want to get better at a technique, having a rubric or a standard for that technique that is agreed upon makes it a lot easier for people to move forward. And Clément, I know that after you worked on this project, you moved on to your PhD research, which looked at developing shared standards for anesthesia residents internationally and some other ways of thinking about building communities of practice that help people get up the learning curve on a particular skill. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think about standards as a part of building international agreements or communities of practice around certain skills.
Yes, and Jenny, it's really interesting because sharing some standards really help to speak the same language, avoid misunderstanding, and just like you mentioned, it is not like think you should do that or you should think like that. Is that if you want to do this way, that's a good backbone to do it, and that can help you. And sharing that help the people to get better, so to go either faster or to go um, to go deeper in the understanding or in the skills.
Thanks, Clément. And as I've been working with Mary Fay, who's a colleague of mine at the Center for Medical Simulation, who works quite often with nursing educators and nursing education societies, one of the things she's highlighted for me is that if we want to create communities capable of developing learners' ability to take feedback or experience feedback, we need to build their feedback literacy. And to do that, we need to have faculty who are clear themselves about how to have skillful feedback conversations. So we're hoping that the AIR can play a role in developing faculty's skill in providing fair, supportive feedback to learners, but also as a kind of model for how do you build agreement around an important skill.
The more I get into the debriefing with good judgment approach, the more that I get there is two aspects of it. So the spirit, the philosophy, the way that you're entering in your conversations, debriefing, you're considering your colleagues, your learner. That's the basic assumption and good judgment philosophy. And there is the kind of technical, more practical aspect that we can even see as a brain opener, just like a bottle opener, that help people to reveal their thought. Because sometimes we're surprised that, and that's the very funny part, that sometimes mindset or frames are popping up that even the person is not conscious about it. And that's kind of it's almost like doing magic. And what is interesting is just like magicians, there is in fact no magic. It's trick and it's training. And when we're doing or observing very nice feedback, people have work on that. They can have some skills, but they have work on this and work and work. I think that has a community of practice. The more we are developing that, the more we are likely to go to the next steps and further.
Thanks, Clément.